Hello everyone, welcome to round 4 of the candidates tournament. We are analyzing the game between Sindarov and Caruana. Heading into this round, the two players were joint leaders with 2.5 points from 3 games each. So this was the derby of the round. Sindarov started with d4 and Fabiano responded with d5. And after a couple of more moves, we have the Queen's Gambit accepted. This is not something that we would expect as Fabiano's first choice, but perhaps he was content with a very good result he achieved in the first 3 rounds. And heading into the rest day, perhaps he just wanted to play something calm, quiet, safe, and maybe just to be able to make a draw. But Sindarov had some different ideas, so here he plays the most aggressive queen e2. For example, it is also possible if white was also feeling peaceful, he could have played dc5 and the queens go off, and now we have a symmetrical structure, symmetrical development. This is very likely to end in a draw. It's very difficult to make any progress here, but Sindarov had different plans. So after queen e2, black played e6. The point of queen e2 is that now if black tries to grab the pawn, you have rook d1 and recapture with the e-pawn. So after a6, again white is a choice. He can play either bishop b3 just to make a retreat, or he can play maybe a4. The purpose of this move is to prevent b5. At the same time, white is leaving this square a little bit weak, so knight can jump here, and maybe even later the bishop can come here. So these are the pros and cons of a4. In the game, Sindarov played knight c3. He allowed the advance with b5. And now most of us were expecting bishop b3 just to keep the bishop on this diagonal and maybe prepare after rook d1, prepare this advance with d5. But Sindarov decided to play bishop d3. And now bishop b7 and a4. So he finally struck the queen side. And here black can choose between two probably equal alternatives. He could have played c4, for example, and to close the center, to release the tension against the d4 pawn, but to gain some space on the queen side. And after bishop c2, b4, knight e4, so now this pawn is hanging, and now knight a5 to protect the pawn. Couple of more moves, let's see, for example, recapture with the pawn. The idea is to use the g file in combination with the powerful bishop diagonal to press the white king. Queen b6, this is roughly equal position. Okay, going back to the game. Here Caruana didn't play c4, he played b4. So he wants to keep the tension against the d4 pawn, but the downside is that now c4 square is a little bit weak and it's becoming available for white's pieces. Knight e4, this is the best move. Going back is too slow. You don't have time to do that. If you want to reach the c4 square, it takes 3 moves to make this maneuver, and during this time black will complete the development and maybe even become slightly better. So knight e4 is practically the only move, and now knight a5. Similar as in line with c4, only here the idea is to use the b3 square and to influence these 4 squares. Okay, white exchange on f6. Again, black takes with the pawn. He's not afraid of doubling the pawns, and he wants to open the g file to press the white king. Now dc5. queen b3. That was the blank's idea behind going to b5. So now he was expecting rook b1 and knight c5, and knight is beautifully placed here. It's controlling a whole bunch of important squares, attacking a4 pawn in even. So this would have been a very good position for black, but Sindarov had something different in mind. So on knight b3, instead of rook b1, he played c6. Beautiful intermediary move. So he attacks the bishop on b7, and now if black would make a mistake of taking the rook, he takes the bishop. And now this pawn is really dangerous. It's very close to promotion. Only one square, the knight is kind of trapped, cannot easily come back into play. Knight d4, knight c6 is coming, rook d1 is coming, queen c4 is coming, maybe even bishop b5. So many great ideas for white, and black now, after losing this bishop, practically has no counterplay at all. So this would have been very bad for black. After c6, so he took the pawn, and now again white is not moving the rook, otherwise this would just be wasted tempo, but he played knight d4. Another move with 2 exclamation marks. The point is, again, if black takes the rook, you take the bishop, the queen is under attack, and now when the queen moves somewhere, no, you just simply calmly come back to d4. The problem is that now white is threatening queen f3 with double attack. He's also threatening b3, bishop b2, and to recapture the knight, and then to have 2 pieces for the rook, which is significant material advantage. And that's why on knight d4, black finally gave up from chasing this passive rook, and he exchanged the knight in the center. And he played rook g8. So this was a logical move for him, and he was probably happy with his position. He was feeling good about the counterplay that he was achieving against the white king. However, as we will see in a couple of moves, white can develop a significant initiative thanks to the fact that black king is stuck in the center. At the moment it's very safe, but we will see soon how white can change this perception. Here also possible was f3, but I don't really like it because, okay, you give up the pawn either way with g3 or f3, develop the bishop with this tempo, that's fine, but now the queen, since this diagonal is closed, no longer has business on d5, but it will go to e5, and now it will threaten bishop d6 and make a battery against the g2 pawn. With this pawn on g3, you would not have this option. But now, whenever you play g3 later, since this pawn is no longer here, this will be a little bit weaker than usual. So, in order to prevent that, it's probably better to play as Sindarov did in the game, g3. And black played f5. So the most important line here for the evaluation of the whole opening process, we are now at the move 17, was queen d4. And here black has an extra pawn. He has some prospect of creating counterplay against the white king, but at the same time his king is still stuck in the center. His pawn structure is demolished, has 3 pawn islands, he has double pawns, so the structure is not ideal. In addition, so for example, after bishop e3, similar to the previous line, tempi, now the queen goes to d5 because it wants to make this checkmate, and now f3, and now the queen is not here, it's here. So this is the small detail that is helping us decide that g3 first was better than f3 first. But also here, so still black has an extra pawn, but now bishop e4 is threatening, bishop a6 is threatening, the pawn is hanging, bishop h7 is threatening, rook fd1, rook ac1, the queen will come under attack on the open files. So it's still, I would say, a slight advantage for white here. In the game, Fabiano, instead of taking the pawn, he played f5. And now a very good move, bishop c4. I really like this move, because first of all, you're preventing black queen from coming to d5 and forming the battery. Second, you are threatening d5. For example, if black plays any neutral move, you play d5, bishop d5, and now rook d1, and you are all tied up. Also on this file. So this would be extremely dangerous for black. And another threat is, let's play another neutral move, for example, just to show, is bishop e6. And this is the triple attack, so black is losing material here. With these two threats in mind, let me just go back quickly and just show that white cannot take the pawn here, even though this one is pinned, because black has this double attack. So now he's threatening the mate and the bishop is under attack. The bishop has no good square to come back. I mean, if you come back here, the checkmate is on h1 as well, so you cannot save your piece, you're losing material. Just be careful about grabbing the pawns. Go back. So bishop c4 was much stronger. So to prevent bishop e6 and d5, black is playing rook g4. For these two purposes, the move is good, but otherwise it's not really ideal, because as white played calm bishop e3, the rook is just out of its place here. The point is that now you cannot play d5 as you intended to, because rook will take on c4, and after queen c4, now you take with the queen on d5, and by again threatening the mate, you're forcing the exchange of the queens. And now this ending, after the queens went off the board, is actually surprisingly good for black. He has an extra pawn, but he's down on exchange, but still his two bishops are very powerful, and I think black would not have major trouble in holding equality here. Instead of d5, also possible was e6, the other idea that we had before, but black will not recapture the bishop. He will play intermediary move rook e4. And now double attack on the bishop and on the queen. And white is losing material. Okay, but even if you cannot play d5 immediately, bishop e3 is good enough. And now, to prevent any other threats of d5 later, black blocked the square with his bishop. White is not obliged to take. Why would you do that just to bring your opponent's piece to a better square? No, he played rook ac1. He'll just simply play rook c1, rook d1, and continue with pressuring the black position. Now he's even not pawn down, the material is equal, so that's all the better for white. Rook e7, bishop e7. So the idea of black is to escape with the king from the central files, and just there is so much tactics here that it was better for him just to run off to f8, g8. But the thing is that now, instead of being pawn down, white is just grabbing the pawn on a6. Black has no threats, no counterplay, so it's safe to grab the pawn, and next move will be probably bishop e5, just to escape this contact with the rook and to protect the pawn on a4. So now, instead of chasing the initiative, the dynamics of the position has changed, and white is actually trying to grab material, to keep material, and just to, maybe in the end promote this pawn to the queen. Why not? Bishop b5. The idea is to play bishop c6 and exchange the bishop and not give it the retreat to b7. Black attacked the pawn on d4, white is calmly defending it, and now king g7. So he finally moved the king into the safety, but it cost him the pawn on a6. And now, what white intended before, bishop c6, forcing the exchange of the bishops. Black is using this opportunity to lift the rook to a5, just want to recapture with the rook on d5. And I guess his idea was to press d4 once again, but white is playing rook c5. He's offering to exchange more pieces. Of course, he's now pawn ahead. Black has no counterplay, and before black can create anything, he just wants to exchange the major pieces. Black is stepping down. Of course, he will not just succumb to white's wishes. And now still d5 is coming on. It's not as dangerous as the king was on e8, but still very, very strong and effective move, because after black captures the pawn on d5, white has queen f3, a very strong move that is picking up black pawns. This rook is now out of place here. It's standing really, really bad. Black tried to do the best to get the best out of the position, and he grabbed another pawn on b2, but now rook d5 first. So this is the threat. Black has to exchange. Another tempo one against the queen. Queen has to move, and now rook f5. The point of this move is that now this one is hanging, but also there is the pressure along the f-file. And black played rook g6, the only move, and now wonderful move h4. I really liked it when I saw it on the board, because it looks like black has consolidated himself, that maybe he can try to push his own pawn to the queen, and this one is stopped on a6. So it kind of looks safe for black until h4 comes into the scene. And now we'll see that after h5, maybe even h6, black position is falling apart. So this rook is now placed well on g6, so we want to remove it from there. Bishop c3, he's clearing the space for the pawn, and now h5. Rook goes to a6, maybe when there is a good moment he can capture on a4. And now, instead of h6 immediately, we didn't like this, because now the rook can come back to g6, and it was really useful that you pushed it away. So instead of that, white played much better move, queen g4, and this move is finally breaking black's resistance, because after you play king h8 and now bishop d4 check, black played f6, but we were looking at the line if he takes on d4. Just wanted to show that now again he has to play f6 and he would lose this pawn. But if he tries to run away to the center, there comes this check and this check. So the only move is to cover up with the queen, and now this check is finally winning the game. So he couldn't take on d4, and for this reason he played f6. He was still hoping that maybe he can hold somehow. But the next move, rook c5, just killed all the hope for black. You have no defense from rook c8, and the position is falling apart. Also h6, queen g7 is coming. So black cannot defend the multiple threats, so he decided to resign. Great result for Sindarov, who is now the sole leader with 3.5 points from 4 games. Full point ahead of Fabiano Caruana and 1.5 against the rest of the field. Today is the rest day, but tomorrow we will continue our live coverage on the channel with round 5. Thank you all for watching and see you soon. Bye bye.